You know what's nice? A universe. Not like the stars in space kind, though that's kinda neat too, but a universe in the gaming sense. A world, its style and design, its story, characters, and so on. Creating a universe is kind of hard because you, at one point, have to set constraints to not overload your universe with content, but you have to carefully draw those lines as to not take away any necessary plot lines, characters, or rules. I recently finished Horizon Forbidden West. It's a great game, I really enjoyed it, but it made me realize something. Games are getting too big. Obviously, I don't mean that in the gigabyte and terabyte sense, though that is a problem too, but in the sense of world building and scope. I will try to not talk in too much detail about the stories of these games where possible, but beware of major spoilers for Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West and the Metro trilogy in book and game form. I assume we all agree that the second entry in a game series should have more to offer to the player than the first one. More mechanics, a bigger world, a better story, and so on. And most devs strive for that, I think, and in many cases that works out great and everyone is happy. Fans get newer, better, bigger games, and the devs and publishers get good PR and a lot of money. But sometimes they overdo it. Let's take a look at a few examples where, at least in my humble opinion, the expansions worked and in which it didn't. Alright, I already mentioned Horizon Forbidden West, so let's start there. The Horizon series, if you're not familiar, is about a world that is seemingly, at least when you take a look at the technological and cultural advancements the people in the story have made, is set in the past. Later in the story of Zero Dawn, the first game, we get to know people who harness modern technology, but the general vibe, especially in the beginning, is, let's say, Bronze Age, and the further you go on in the story, the closer to modern times you get in terms of architecture and clothing and so on. I can already see the anthropologists facepalming over this, I am sorry. Nevertheless, there are animals that are actually robots, highly advanced ones at that, and they roam the fields and mountains and lakes of Earth. And something is seriously wrong with them. So this is where it is. A weird blend of old and new, a secret past that over the course of the game explains to us how all of this came to be, and in between all that is a young woman named Aloy who tries to understand who she is and where she comes from. The second game, Horizon Forbidden West, expands on this idea in my opinion, natural way. There's this forbidden land to the west, a land we already heard stories about, so barren and brutal that its people are just the same, and now Aloy has to go there because something is still looming in the shadows, something that survived at the end of Zero Dawn. And although a gotcha, still not dead, from the final boss is kind of a shit move, it comes through a sort of betrayal from a character who, with the big enemy they snatched away from Aloy's arrows, tries to find out who's really responsible for all this. And that's okay. I want to explore new worlds with my sassy redhead archer, and if there's an even bigger evil tribe to be found who are the reason for all of this, I'm here for it. But there isn't. They have the whole ass world to create any sort of enemy, a tribe, a person, maybe another AI, I don't care. But it's actually, get this, almost immortal former humans who left Earth 1,000 years ago and now come back to fuck shit up again. And they had the enemy of Zero Dawn flatten the place so they can make it their own again. They have a clone of our protagonist with them, and they have the super advanced armor, and they have a god complex. The thing is, it's not a bad story, actually. The more I think about it, the more it kind of makes sense and works throughout the whole story, but it's not Horizon for me, and that's the problem. Stories in ye olden times, like Far Cry Primal or Zero Dawn, even though it's set in the future, usually take place in small worlds. The world used to be smaller in a conceptual sense, and introducing such a far-reaching concept as space humans is just... It doesn't work for me. The game managed to broaden its scope in almost every way. More and deeper characters, bigger, more detailed world with incredible, and I mean it, incredible graphics, advanced gameplay, and so on, but the story aspect was overdone. Now, I know this is highly subjective, and you should know this as well, but I would have wished for a more grounded story. Something, and I think this is my main point, something that explores the huge potential of, well, Earth before feeling the need to expand its story into the literal universe. Okay, still not convinced? At the end of Forbidden West, it is revealed that those space humans created an AI from their minds, the minds of sometimes nice, mostly batshit crazy millionaires and billionaires. They locked the AI up and tortured it, and now it's on its way through fucking space, traveling as or in whatever, to destroy every planet where its creators could possibly live, including Earth. Yeah, no. I'm still gonna play Horizon 3. I feel like I'm always hovering around the same, 5 to 6 games, but hear me out. Red Dead Redemption 2. It's an interesting concept really, because chronologically it's before the first, but release-wise it's the second game. So there are more characters, there's probably a bit more depth, and definitely more and diverse gameplay in the game, set at an earlier time. But interesting yet meaningless ideas aside, RDR2 did what Horizon couldn't. The map is bigger, it shows more sites, but it's still the same. It's North America at the turn of the 20th century. Hell, the whole map from RDR is in RDR2. And I think anyone would agree that there's absolutely nothing boring about the map of the second game. There's no need to go into another continent, no need to introduce other forms of settlement, it's just the logical expansion of what was given. Same goes for the gameplay. You still ride a horse, mostly, you can hunt and shoot and talk and walk, but better, more. RDR2 relies heavily on evolving its story inside of its constraints, and rightly so, and I think that Forbidden West would have deserved the same treatment. When Dmitry Khulkovsky, the author of, among other books, the Metro trilogy, finally released the third installment, I was excited, but soon disappointed. It made a lot of sense to end his book the way he did, to make the story more of a political thriller than a horror book. He is an outspoken critic of the Russian government under Putin and used his huge platform to tell a story that is pretty much a metaphor for what was happening in his country, and is happening in his country, and I applaud him for that. The games based on his books and writing for them, Metro 2033, Last Light and Exodus, had to follow this expansion. And story-wise, I am totally fine with that. The first game is more or less the first book, while the second game and the second book play into each other's hands a bit but tell different stories. The third book connects the three, and the last game, Metro Exodus, finally completely connects all plot lines, and that's where it gets tricky. Fully throws us out of the Metro and onto rails, more precisely onto the Aurora, a locomotive and our home for the game. Similarly to Forbidden West, it makes sense. The story makes sense, there are no complaints there. But what makes Metro as a game so interesting, what makes it work, is the Metro. In the books as well as the games, it is its own character. It is like a huge animal, a being that we are just an annoying parasitic part of. And its wet and narrow tunnels, moldy ladders and creaking doors are a crucial part of what makes the first two Metro games great. Years back I did a video on why Metro 2033 and Last Light are such great games, and one huge aspect was the atmosphere. I really don't play many horror games because I don't get, but also just don't like jump scares. But Metro, and in it, the Metro, creates a feeling of dread and despair, of claustrophobic, all-encompassing tension. And when you take Artyom out of this place, you lose all of that, in an instant. Metro Exodus is a great game, I like it, I really like it, Picasso. But it's not really a Metro game, it's a semi-open world adventure survival shooter, and a good one. Nice story, very cool settings, advanced gameplay, graphics, more depth and detail, everything I liked and mentioned about RDR2. The game starts off in the Metro for, the first hour or so. Apart from that, you are on the train and in several derelict radioactive parts of Russia. You play as Artyom and you're with Anna and your comrades, and you have your typical guns and the music and the sounds, but it didn't feel the same as before, and I didn't understand why. Until I had to go back underground in a level, until it dumped me back into a Metro-like setting after hours of more or less open areas. There it was. Moldy, wet, tight spaces, darkness, heavy breathing under a gas mask. Exactly what I wanted, exactly what I needed, and sadly not really what this game had to offer me. I am realizing that it is actually not that easy finding a game that is comparable to Metro in that both have very tight and quite, let's say, unique level design and structure, such as Metro tunnels. But I think that Dishonored is a good counterpart. Narrow, dirty streets, the city, some but not too many people around, dark corners to hide in, limited resources, weird monsters. It works. And after Dishonored 1, there was Dishonored 2. New setting, even the new protagonists, sort of, new abilities, you know the drill. And even though it was brighter and a bit more open than Dishonored 1, it was still full of Dishonored levels. It felt and feels right. I want to say more about it, but that's just it. It expanded on its premise without losing its core. I have to admit though that comparing two games to a trilogy isn't really fair, especially if the first two games of the trilogy are, just like Dishonored 1 and 2, very close to their core design. I guess we'll have to wait for Dishonored 3 to see if this comparison really holds up. Now, I know I might come across like an old dude complaining about the world changing, and I hope that I got the fact across that I really enjoy all of the games mentioned in this video. I'm just worried and a bit tired of the, I don't know if trend is the right word, but the increasingly occurring design choice of expanding games out of their confines for dubious reasons. When it's done well, it's great, but when it's done to follow the open world trend or to make a story seemingly more interesting and bombastic, I really don't think it elevates the game and the IP to where it belongs. I also don't want games to always stay the same, of course. That only works and has worked with some specific games, mostly sports-based games like FIFA, Need for Speed or Tony Hawk's way back when. And even they had to evolve at some point, even though not as far as others. What are your games that evolved too far, or actually just right? I would love to know. Thanks for watching.